Today, I'm introducing you to Cari Kenzie. In 2013, Cari was a runner in the Boston Marathon. She had just completed the marathon when 2 bombs went off near her, which took the lives of 3 people and injured 260 others. Cari believed she walked away from this uninjured externally, but the invisible impact of the trauma turned into Epstein-Barr, Lyme disease, seizures, and several other illnesses. It would take lots of doctors and months of research before she realized the bombing and the illnesses were actually connected. On this show, Cari will absolutely blow your mind with the methodology she used to not only heal her physical illness, but to create a healthy and whole reality for herself today. In our conversation, we go deep into the exact solution you can implement to begin your journey of healing as well. Let's jump in. Hello, Cari. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
So you are a runner, which yes. I am not. I've always tried to be a runner, but for some reason I can't get there. And running, I know running is part of your life, and you've done some marathons, and you qualified for the Boston Marathon. So I just want to talk about that for a minute, because that's a big deal to be able to qualify for the Boston Marathon. And I'd love to just jump into your story right there with the qualifying and kind of go from there.
Yeah. It's funny you say, my body loves to run, I think, more than I do sometimes. I mean, it's just, I started running in 2009 after my youngest was born. I had owned a company marketing agency at the time and super stressed, had a full team. Thought, well, I need something to relieve my stress, so I'll start running. And that's when I kind of took off. I qualified for Boston actually in 2010. It was the second marathon I ever ran, which is really kind of cool, and actually nothing I never shot for. It wasn't even on my list of bucket list. Someday I would love to run Boston. I couldn't have even told you what Boston Marathon meant. To me, It was like just another marathon. So I ended up in Boston in 2013, which was really, kind of like the pinnacle of a runner's dream. By this point, I've now caught on to the sheer magnitude of what it is that I've accomplished. And I've trained, I've done all the things in order to make sure that I am set. Because my mindset when I showed up that day was, I will run this so that I qualify, so that I can come back again. Because once you qualify, you get to run it once, and you only have 2 years in order to be able to run it. So that as I stepped into and on the start line that day, that was my intention and that was my goal.
So do you have to complete or do a certain level of performance at the marathon to then qualify again to run it the next year?
Yeah. So there's a certain time that you have to hit based on your age bracket in order to be able to qualify. You can qualify at marathons outside of Boston, but you can also qualify at Boston.
Okay. So, this was pretty exclusive. This was a big deal that really big you qualified for this. You were there. You're pumped. You're excited. You have a goal. I'm going to rock this so I can come back next year. So I love that. How old were you at the time?
Oh my gosh. So I would have been, I'm doing math here, 33. No, I would have been older than that, 38. I don't know. I wasn't 33.
Mid-30s. Let's just call it mid-30s.
Mid-30s.
Right? And that's pretty significant. When I remember for my 35th birthday, I was like, I'm going to run a marathon, because at that time I thought turning 35 was a big deal, which of course was 10 years ago. But, I was like, I'm going to be 35. I'm going to run a marathon, even though I'm not a runner. And I did the couch potatoes marathon, app training program. And I remember I got to the point where I could run 9 miles. The first day I ran 9 miles, and I got home, I laid down on the living room floor, and I never got up and I never went back. Obviously I got up, but I never went back running again. I was like, that was the death of me, was 9 miles. Gosh. So I can't even imagine, I know it's very hard work, number one, to even complete a marathon, but for you to, be able to qualify for Boston is a really big deal. So I want to make sure that our audience understands it, because I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't either before stepping into it. Had no clue.
So take us to that day. You arrive in Boston. You know, just walk me through kind of where your mindset was at, how you're feeling, what's going on around you.
super excited. So you take a bus. We stayed in Boston, and then you take a bus. They bus you up to Hopkinton, and then you run basically from Hopkinton back down to Boston. And as we started, I mean, it was one of those like perfect, brisk, amazing days for running. I remember one of the spectators up at the start line wrote my name down my arm, so as you're running, people are cheering you on because you need that to like keep going. And I took off. It was going incredibly well. I was hitting my time, I was on my pace. I knew my staff in the office back home, they were tracking me. My ex, my mom, they were there at the time, and they're tracking me, and everything is just going really, really well. And then I hit like Heartbreak Hill. Heartbreak Hill is notorious for taking runners out. And I did not think it was going to get me because I train hills. Well, I get up this, I get to the other side. It's probably like, I want to say around mile 22, my body really started to give out. I mean, muscles start to cramp. My mind is going in all the places because you get like, it's a mental game. Running is more a mental game really than it is a physical game, right?
Yeah.
So while my body might be cramping, my mind is going in all the places. Well, I have made deals with myself before. This isn't my first rodeo. My muscles have cramped. And before the race, what I do is I would go to the expo and I would buy the finisher's jacket. It's just this very like, it's got the finisher on the back, and I would purchase this. But the deal I would make is you can't wear it unless you've actually finished the race. Right? So the last 22 miles, as I'm having to pull off and drink water and stretch my muscles, and spectators are like, are you okay? Do you need any help? I'm like, nope, I got this. Because in my mind, I'm telling myself, you have to finish this race. If you don't finish this race, you don't get to wear that finisher's jacket. And so you'll finish this race, and when you're done, you'll just go directly to the medical tent. It'll be fine. Just go as soon as you finish. This is how I walked myself through the last 4 miles of I would run, and then I would walk, and then I'd run. And mentally, this was the game that I was playing. Well, I finally made it across the finish line, collapsed over one of the fences on the other side. A volunteer came up, wrapped me in one of those Silver Mylar blankets, and escorted me into the medical tent. And that is how I finished that race.
Wow. So you finished.
I finished, and I went to that medical tent. Let me tell you, they came in, a few volunteers came up around me, wanting to take temperature. They just need to figure out what's going on. Yeah. I'm sure I was massively dehydrated. And they get up to go and, get whatever is necessary, whatever I need in order to be able to replenish my body. And there was this sound that went off like a cannon. It sounded like a cannon in my mind that went off. And I remember sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, I didn't know that's how they celebrated Patriots Day, right? Because the day of the Boston Marathon is a holiday in Boston. The Red Sox play, the Boston Marathon goes, businesses are closed down. It's Patriots Day. Like this is a holiday there. And so, wow, I didn't know they set off cannons. Like, that's pretty amazing. As soon as that thought flows through my mind, boom. And there's a second resounding sound, and it literally felt like the universe was coming out from underneath me. The ground shook, the tent shook, everything. It just felt like the core of the universe was shaking. And I instantaneously knew. I looked up, and I caught the eyes of a volunteer, and we both knew that bombs had just been set off.
Wow.
Yeah.
You just know.
You just know. It was one of those intuitive, never had the experience before, but you just instantaneously knew exactly what was happening.
So, it's one thing to be somewhere. I've never been in this situation, so I'm just kind of trying to put myself in that situation of imagining what it's like. But you've just been through something that is physically and mentally completely draining of everything in you.
Yep.
You probably, your adrenaline is done because you've been riding on adrenaline, and then this happens. Like, what is happening inside of your body and your mind at that moment? Because it's not like you're at a really great, healthy spot to react to this. You're depleted.
You know what's funny is I was completely depleted and reacted instantly. Because there's an element of self-preservation that takes over. Like when you understand that a bomb has just gone off, my mind immediately went to, I have no idea where my family's at. My family has no idea where I'm at.
Right.
I don't know what's happening outside of this tent. And everything happens so slow and so fast at the same time. When you can track, I can track exactly the thoughts that I was having during that time period. It's like that part's in slow motion.
Mm-hmm.
But as I'm thinking these thoughts, they're instantaneously bringing in what I call the casualty of Lyme and the soul deprived people. That because we tend to disassociate, right, in those types of catalytic moments. And as they start to bring them in, I instantaneously realize I need to leave. I'm fine. I'm fine. Other people are going to need more clearly than I do. And I don't know where my family's at. Right. So I looked at a volunteer up at the front and I was like, I'm fine. And of course, nobody cares at this point. Right. And so I step outside of the tent and I look to my right, which is down Runner's Alley. This is down, beyond the finish line where there should be crowds of people and it is empty. I don't see anybody. All I imagine when I look at that is sunshine and emptiness. Then I turn to my left, which is the finish line, and it is dark and it is chaos. And as soon as I turn to my left, and I'm kind of catching glimpses of everything that's happening, but it just feels like a big chaotic ball of craziness, people start screaming at me, run as fast as you can.
Oh, wow.
And I witness what I call a line of Yellow Jackets volunteers start running and chasing me down the street. And so I turn and I run as far and as fast as I possibly can. And when I give speeches and I talk people, through this experience, I say, I don't know how far I ran. I don't know how fast. I don't know when I stopped. But I eventually made it to the family meeting area, which at this point I had no idea had been shut down because they had thought that there was a third bomb.
Oh.
And that would have been a prime location to place one.
Right.
So it would take a while. I don't know how long. I didn't have my phone. Somebody from Boston had seen me. Can we help you? Is there anything that we can do? I said, I cannot get a hold of my family. I eventually got a hold of my ex. He and my mom came and found me, and we eventually made it back to the hotel. At this point, I know exactly what's happened, and I have no idea what's happened, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I think there's such a conscious understanding and an unconscious denial of you just aren't connecting reality. Right. So we go back to the hotel. We went out to dinner that night. The next day is when everything shifted for me. And this is an incredible moment. I think that so many people have in these types of situations, whether they be extreme or not. But I went down to pick up my bag, my phone, and we were standing at the end of Boylston Street, overlooking kind of the devastation. And a reporter came up behind me because, of course, I'm wearing my finisher's jacket. And he starts tapping me on the shoulder and he's like, hey, can I ask you about your experience? Can you tell me where you were? Where you were when the bombs went off? And as he's asking me these questions, there is a literal voice inside my head. And it said, it's not your story to tell. And I turned and I walked away.
Wow. What? Why?
Right? Think about that.
Yeah. Because I want to say it is your story to tell.
Right.
You were there. You were right in the middle of all of it. Mm-hmm. What caused you to think that?
The moment that thought came up, what followed was I wasn't injured. My family's okay. I'm walking away. Somebody has it worse. Somebody needs the attention more than I do. These are the instant thoughts that happen when people go through situations. We tend to very automatically invalidate our own experiences in honor of somebody else.
Yeah. So you were like, I'm not a victim here.
I'm not a victim.
Fine, so I don't have a story to tell.
Yeah. Yeah. And even to this day, when I give speeches, one of the questions I will get asked is, well, were you injured? And we don't realize the power of the words that we speak in our own curiosity to somebody else, and the way that it can instantaneously diminish their experience.
Yeah.
Just in the way that we choose our words.
Yeah, because there's all different ways. Just the fact that you were there, you could have been injured, you could have died, your family could have, there's all these could haves that could have happened, right? But it's still something that is so shocking and devastating to the system, to our bodies, to our minds, and everything. And I'd imagine that you probably didn't start to experience the after effects of how that was going to impact you, both mentally, emotionally, in all the ways, because very early on, you dismissed. Like, no, I'm good. I wasn't, I was there, but like, I'm good.
Yeah.
And so how did life start to look like for you after that? Was it like, hey, everything's normal and I'm good? Or did things start to kind of come apart in that way, you know?
Yeah. When I came home, what I say is I came home a spectator, not a participant. So
tell me what that means.
So what that means is when I boarded the plane, I had been a runner in the Boston Marathon. And when I came home, I shifted, meaning that I went straight back to work the next day. I turned on the news. I watched the news with my staff as they hunted down the brothers. When they found the second brother, we shut off the TV and I just went back about every day. And so I didn't allow myself the opportunity to really go through it, so to speak, because, and this is when we package those things away, when we box them up, like I say, in tribute or in honor of somebody else, then we're no longer participating in the life that we've experienced.
Wow.
And when I did that, I did go back to work and I did watch the news and I ran in tribute, right? So the community pulled together here and we ran in tribute for those who had been injured and devastated in the marathon. It was about 3 months later. I was out running and like I could run well over 100 miles a week. Like I just, I'd been out running and I think I want to say I was probably 3-4 miles and I had to call my husband at the time to come pick me up because I just couldn't run anymore. And I thought it was really odd, very strange. That was the last time I ran. Within weeks, I could not walk up a flight of stairs unassisted. And I became devastatingly, debilitatingly ill. And I had no idea why. Now, what's really fascinating is I've recently gone back into my voice notes and my phone and into journals. In September of that year, of 2013, I wrote in my journal, God has seen me through one step in front of the other. And I've really navigated through the experience of what happened that day in April of this year. And it was right after that I got very sick.
Wow.
So I ended up spending years, good couple of years, looking for the answers to what was physically happening to me. I was having seizures standing up. I had migraine headaches. My muscles cramped so bad I couldn't no longer sign checks at work. I couldn't stir to cook food. I mean, it just went on and on and on. And I kept going to doctors and to specialists to figure out what was happening. I was looking for validation. Right. 2014, I go into a doctor and it's a specialist. I'm like, okay, nobody has sent me to this guy, right? It's like you go through the phone book and you're like, this guy right here. So I go in, I sit with him. He checks my chart. He looks at my symptoms. He does my vitals. And he says to me, he goes, are you a runner? I was like, well, yeah, why? He's like, oh, because your heart rate's really low. And I thought, okay, I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like, okay. And he says, well, I don't have anything that's going to be able to help you. But here's what I can tell you. You're not depressed. Because I've never known a runner to be depressed.
Wow.
Now, what was incredible in that moment, which became a light bulb, kind of lightning strike in the darkness, was that he saw me. He didn't look at my chart. He didn't assess me based on he saw me.
Mm.
And that was the beginning of my transition and starting to choose me.
So for most people, I want to step back to you talking about how you started to experience all of these problems.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, in the beginning, you weren't putting 2 and 2 together. Like,
Oh.
of course this is happening. I've just been through this traumatic event. Like, this just seems like this just came out of nowhere. I'm a healthy woman in my mid-30s and I'm a runner and I take care of myself and I'm experiencing this, and you're going to doctor after doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And what are they telling you? Like, you're fine, your labs are normal. Like what are the doctors saying to you that you're going to about why this is happening?
Well, nobody could really tell me what was going on. What I would tend to get is that I was depressed.
Okay.
It was always an answer I got. You're depressed, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
Those tended to be the ones that came up over and over and over again. Well, none of those give you anything.
Right.
Right.
Like, what do I do with that?
Yeah. I'm like, that doesn't. So I continued to search. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the depression part. So this is interesting to me when you say there was a couple of doctors who said that you were depressed,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where I would look at that and think maybe those doctors were onto something, that like almost like there's something deeper, maybe emotionally based, mentally, psychologically based here that's causing this.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of times women especially get dismissed by doctors of like, oh, this is just a hormonal thing, or this is just whatever. And so a lot of those things get dismissed. But in reality, in your case, there was actually something that triggered this, that happened, that was causing it. And so it's interesting to me that I feel like maybe those doctors were like onto something a little bit. They were wrong, but they were at least looking at it from a perspective of it just not being some kind of medical thing. And then when the doctor said you're not depressed, I'm curious of what you said. The light bulb went off for you.
Mm-hmm.
What about that? Because you've heard you're depressed, you've heard you're not depressed, right? You heard. So what happened inside of you, or what thought happened for you that made you go, this, there's something deeper going on here than just, I have like.
So it did not occur to me that it was something deeper. Now, the interesting thing is that when you have physical ailments like I had, I mean, it was physical ailments.
Yeah.
And somebody
seizures
tells
and
you
stuff.
you're
You're not
depressed.
thinking, oh, I have a seizure because I'm depressed. Yeah.
No. So when somebody tells you you're depressed, I'm like, I'm not depressed. I can't sign a check.
Right.
I'm not depressed. I just can't, I can't sleep, or I'm not depressed. So that never made the connection for me.
Yeah.
But when that doctor said to me, you're not depressed, I don't have anything that can help you, you're not depressed, I've never known a runner to be depressed. What I realized is that nobody was going to have the answer for me except for me. That I was going to have to take this into my own hands, and I was going to have to do the searching. And so I shifted from going to all of these doctors and following what they were telling me to doing my own research, my own study. I would listen to podcasts. I would look in books. I would go online. And if something showed up to me 3 times, then I'd go, oh, maybe that's something I should look into. And so the first thing that kept showing up was Lyme disease. And so I found a doctor locally who would do the testing that I knew I needed for that. And I went into her and I said, hey, I think I've got this thing going on. She tested. She's like, yes, you do. Oh, okay. So then we start doing treatment for that. And then something else would pop up 3 times. And I go, okay, I think I've got something going on with my thyroid. Can we test that? Yes. You do have something going on with your thyroid. So that's how I started to put the pieces together from a physical standpoint.
Right.
Well, this would go on from 2013, really, until 2016. Now, at this point, I've done Western medicine. I've done holistic medicines. I have changed my diet. I've gone keto. I've done all of the things that I can possibly. I've covered my mirror in my bedroom with a sheet, for Pete's sake.
Wow.
I've done everything.
Yeah.
And I still wasn't able to get over the hump. So I get an email for a coaching program, showed up, and I just had that moment. I don't know if anybody listening has had that moment where you're like, I just have to do that, right? This email shows up, opens up, and I'm like, yep, gut reaction, hit the apply, paid the fee, didn't tell anybody, didn't ask anybody, didn't even look at my work schedule. I was like, 1,000%, I just have to be there. I'm going.
Yeah.
So I went to this conference and I was talking to a gal in one of the exhibits and telling her kind of, what I had going on. By this point, I'm on 5 sleep medications, prescription to go to sleep at night. I mean, it just was like this cascade. So I've got this, chronic Lyme. I've been working to get over it. She goes, yeah, I navigated that too. I have a gal who does a thing. You should give her a call. She really helped me. It's really what she said. Well, at this point, you do get to a point where you're like, I don't care what they do. Like voodoo dolls, crystal balls. I don't care. Give me the number, right? Yeah. So I called her up, and this is not what she said, but this is what it felt like. She said, I called her up. She's like, so tell me about your childhood. And I was like, I remember saying, that's not why I'm calling you. Yeah. I'm calling because I have Lyme disease. What she opened for me in that moment was that piece of understanding of this is deeper than the physical experience that I've been through.
Right.
That there is some form of trauma. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, okay, maybe there's something here. Now, when that door opened and when I started to address the trauma, not just from Boston, but from everything that led to Boston, the insomnia was gone overnight.
Oh, wow.
Literally overnight. And everything started
to be acknowledging and like realizing.
Part of it was acknowledging and realizing. And the other piece of it is when we trap those emotions, when we package things away, we do so because our minds have taught us, our subconscious minds have held on to something for a long period of time in order to protect us. Well, when it does that, we have this hardwired program that's hanging out underneath the surface of what we consciously think running our daily lives. I didn't know this. I had no awareness of this whatsoever.
Yeah.
Well, when people will ask me, they'll say, Cari, you talk about patterns all the time. Like, what was the thing in Boston? Like, what led you there? Mm-hmm. I said, look at that one piece where I said, it's not my story to tell. I didn't understand my value.
Yeah.
I didn't know I was worthy of an experience. Well, that didn't happen that day in Boston. That happened a long time before that. When I was able to go back and find the resource, what I call the resource of it, and understand why I believed that to begin with, then I could energetically shift that neural pathway in my subconscious mind, teach myself something different. And all of a sudden, the energy of me shifts and changes, which means the energy of that illness now gets to be released.
Okay. I feel like you just opened up Pandora's box. Like, okay. I'm just like, my mind is like, all right, we got to go. We got to talk about that more. Okay. Okay. I feel like you just said a whole big giant mouthful of like awesomeness. And then somebody just heard that and went, okay, oh my gosh, I need to know more about that. Like, let's go a step deeper into that of what that looks like in reality, right? Like you were all of the things that something happens at some point in time in our life to most people in some way, shape, or form. And it looks different for everyone.
Yes.
And it could be, a relationship you have with a parent as a child and something they've said or done to you that caused you to have this belief about yourself. It could be a divorce. It could be all kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, we go into protection, right? Like our brain wants to protect us from that. We don't even know that it's happening.
No.
And we create a story around it that, again, we probably don't really realize we created a story around, and we're carrying this, and it's shaping the way we view everything in our lives and actions we take in everything. And this can happen at any time in life. Could have been childhood, could have been in your 30s, whenever. Yeah. But you're talking about that even causing physical illness in our body.
Yeah.
And being able to fix that through the pathways in our mind. So let's talk more about that, because I feel like I just totally butchered what you said. You said it way better
No,
than
you did it really well.
I'm like, how do I break this down to my understanding?
Yeah.
You did it so good. Like, talk more about that.
Yeah. So when we talk about illnesses and we talk about disease, they'll call it dis-ease. It means that something is just not aligning correctly in your energy, which means that we have placed a misinterpretation on an experience in the past. Now, the interesting thing about that, and where we have to understand and give ourselves grace, is even in my instance, I was a young child. I'm 3, 4, 5 years old. And it could have been, like you say, it could have been a bully on the playground.
Mm-hmm.
It could have been the fact that I was placed in a gift and talented class. It could have been any number of situations that I then interpreted as me being less than, not as important enough, being separated from. Okay. And then when my mind decides that this is the way it needs to be in order for me to be loved, in order for me to be connected or to be protected, then that's the belief system that I'm going to carry forward throughout the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And the mind will create things to prove it's right.
It finds what it's looking for.
Oh, it finds what it's like, that red car that you want, you consistently see driving down the street. It does that with our beliefs. So our subconscious mind will show us everything that's hanging out under the surface if we just bring in awareness and pay attention.
Yeah.
Well, in that energy and in the field of quantum physics, everything is energy. I'm energy, your energy, our thoughts are energy, illness is energy. So the way that I describe it to people I'm working with, I'm like, all right, so if there's an illness, let's take Lyme disease as an example. Lyme disease is an energy and it has a particular vibration. Epstein-Barr, same thing. Now, they will say that 85% of society is walking around with Epstein-Barr hanging out in their systems, but it doesn't express itself to everybody, right? It only expresses itself to certain people.
Right.
And then people, they'll go, well, why is that? And I'll say, it's because it's like Epstein-Barr was walking around to the neighborhood, knocking on all the doors. And it knocked down the guy across the street. It was like, yeah, it's too modern for me. And it went down. It's like, woo, those colors, man. That's just like bold. And then it knocked on your door. It was like, ooh, that's a match. That feels comfy. That feels cozy in there because it's matching that energy vibration of not feeling of value. And then it comes in, it takes up host. Well, when we can shift that understanding of I'm not valuable or I'm lacking in value because I invalidate myself, whatever the case may be, when you shift that, the Lyme disease can't hang out anymore. You just change the environment. And now that Lyme disease is like, well, that's no fun.
Yeah.
And it releases.
Yeah. This reminds me of an episode I did. I interviewed a woman who had breast cancer, and she was saying that the nurses, as soon as you start cancer treatment, the nurses will tell you that the mindset that you maintain during your treatment will determine the outcome of how successful it will be.
Yes.
And that they tell you that right from the beginning. They're like, you must maintain a positive and healthy mindset during this. And she said that they could tell you which people were going to survive cancer and which ones weren't based
1,000%.
on their mindset and their attitude and all of that during their treatments. And so this is, we don't realize that, and I'm so guilty of this. This is like really speaking to me. I'm the kind of person that I'm like, I can handle anything, right? I'll just push through it, push it down, suck it up, move forward. And through my divorce, I'm not that crazy anymore. not crazy, but like not as severe. Like I used to just be like, I was like, I can handle anything. Right.
Yeah.
And what started to happen to me is I started to have anxiety, and I'd never had anxiety in my entire life. And at first, when it started happening, I was short of breath and I was having these different feelings. And I would go to the doctor and be like, I think something's wrong with my heart. Like, y'all need to do an EKG. Like, I was a paramedic before, right? So I'm like, y'all need to do some blood work, EKG, this, and there's something wrong with my heart. I'm short of breath, this and that. And the very first time that the doctor said to me, I think this is anxiety. There's nothing wrong with your heart. This is anxiety. And I was like, no. Like, no, I'm strong. Like,
right?
I don't get anxiety.
Yes.
Right? I can handle this. I'm not overwhelmed. Like and so what happened was I had convinced my mind so much, like mentally, I was pushing myself through all of this. But as we know, and there's a book I think called this, The Body Keeps the Score.
Yes.
Is that physically, eventually my body was like, no, like, we can't handle this anymore. You might keep telling yourself you can handle this, but we can't handle this anymore. And I realized, oh, wow, this is actually anxiety. That was really hard for me to accept. And it just, listening to what you're saying, I'm like, how many people are walking around right now with some kind of medical illness, and it's real, right? That was created due to the level of stress or trauma or something else they're carrying that is causing that to happen inside of their body.
The body is the communication from the soul. So the body's going to express to you the things that are out of alignment. And it's going to tell you the places where there's a lacking of self-love, of self-acceptance, of self-acknowledgement, of true understanding of where things, like I say, are just kind of out of alignment.
Yeah.
And so when it has that communication, we have the ability to be able to tap in and to ask the question, and your body will reveal to you what's going on, what's happening. If we understand that that's truly what it's doing.
Right.
But I think too often, for so many people, we look at things as compartments. We look at things. I know when I owned my business, it was that way. It was like, you go to business and you leave everything hanging up outside, right? And then when you leave, you come out, and then, or the physical, if something's happening physically, it's happening physically.
Yeah.
If it's mental, it's something different. And we have never understood the oneness of everything. There's no way you can walk into business and leave your personal life outside.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
And there's no way that your physical body cannot be expressive of your mental state. It's impossible. And I think if we bring ourselves to that understanding and that acceptance, we do truly have the ability to be able to overcome and to heal the things that are expressing themselves within us.
So I think, and we're taught that, right? Like, oh, don't bring your personal life to work.
Yes.
You know, like we're taught to compartmentalize very early on in life. We're taught to ignore our feelings very early on in life. We're told that they'll lead you astray. You know, there's like so many things that we're taught very early on in life, the compartmentalization. And this is so true. This just happened in my business in the last year and a half. I went through a divorce. A key player on my team went through a lot of loss and trauma in their family and affected them. And, I had a choice of whether it was just gonna be like, well, we're just going to plow through this and ignore everything that's happening. But instead I was like, you know what, we're going to take our foot off the gas. And if that means that the company doesn't grow this year, it just maintains, like, we're just going to take really good care of our clients. But other than that, we need to take care of ourselves. Right.
Yeah.
And, I know for a fact that it would have been disastrous if we had just tried to push through all of that. But there was a time in my life when I would have believed that was the answer.
Yes.
And once I accepted and realized that I can't separate, I just physically couldn't separate the emotions and the grief and the things I was feeling from my divorce from my work. Yeah. Even though I always believed I could separate it, I got to the point where I just physically could not do it anymore. And I was forced to look at it and face it. And so what's the first step of someone, they're listening right now and they're like, oh my gosh, I think I might have been doing that my whole life, or that might be the cause of this. Like, what's the first thing that needs to happen in order for what we're talking about here to even take place, right?
Well, I think you hit it. And one of the first things that I say, having just gone through a divorce myself, I understand kind of that space and container, is that You just have to allow space for it. I mean, the first thing is we're going to have chaos and we're going to have confusion in those types of moments and in everyday moments where it feels like maybe the rug's been pulled out just a little bit or your confidence has been shaken. And so embracing that chaos, embracing that confusion, and allowing yourself to just sit in the moment really, truly is the first step. Because instinctively, we want to package it away. Yeah. Instinctively, we want to keep moving on. We want to prove that we're okay. We want to prove that we've got this. Yeah. But if we can allow ourselves and just sit in a moment of acceptance, that is a huge key first step.
And that's hard.
It's really hard, right? Yeah. I think that probably sometimes is the hardest part.
Yeah. It's probably why most people never make it to step 2. Because they can't make it to step 1.
I know. Well, you have to understand, everybody needs to understand that every experience, every situation, every emotion is worthy. It is valid and it's valuable. And it needs to be expressed. That's it. I mean, the energy has to move. Energy has to move. And when we compartmentalize those things, it's like a caged animal. It will come back and it will shake you to your core. Yeah.
So first you have to make space. When you say make space, I think, I used to hear that term and I'd be like, what does that even mean? And I'll tell you what it means to me, but then I'd love for you to elaborate on it if I don't really do a good job with it. But to me, making space is like, you have to sit in it.
Yes.
You have to feel it, right? We want to go around it, above it, over it, under it, all the things. We want to do everything except for get in it.
Go through. Yeah.
Go through it. Yeah. And I was really good at that. So making space to me means that you're not making the feelings wrong. You're not beating yourself up for them. You're not trying to change them. You're just acknowledging and being like, this is how I feel. And it's not good or bad. It just is.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to try to make it go away.
Yeah.
Would you say that?
It is. It's that understanding and knowing and giving yourself the space, like you say, to just sit in it and understanding the courage that it takes in that moment to be able to do that. I call that, it's like blind courage, because the courage I'm talking about is truly, it is the one where you are choosing you in that moment.
Yeah.
You're choosing to allow yourself to have the space to be able to feel the emotions. The reason why people don't do it is because there is a fear that if I sit in this, if I allow this emotion to come through, this is the thing that's going to take me out.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Like this.
You're like, I can't go there. I can't. I won't come back.
Nope, I can't.
Yeah.
I think, you know what, honey, you already went through it. You already did the hard part.
Yeah.
Now it's just allowing the rest of it to move and to flow through.
Yeah. I would tell myself, I would feel myself feeling the thing and maybe starting to probably like crying is such a release. But I used to tell myself like, Adrienne, you can't cry right now. Okay. You have a call in 30 minutes. You can't cry right now. Your kids are about to come home from school.
Yep.
You can't cry right now. You have to go do this. And so I constantly, it's like my body was trying to release all this stuff. And I kept telling it, no, now's not the time. Like it was like I was trying to schedule the perfect time for it to happen. And and that will never happen. That's what it feels like what you're saying right now.
Well, and it takes some intentionality too. I mean, there was a point, because I did a lot of healing around Boston and the experience of Boston, but I knew there was more. When you're just kind of like, I know there's more that needs to be released. Yeah. And so I sat and I watched the movie. I mean, that's the kind of like, and the reason why I did it is in order to give myself the opportunity to be truly healed.
Yeah.
And to really see who I could potentially be on the other side. I had a woman that I recently started working with, and she had written on her intake notes. She's like, I don't want to go back to the person I was. I want to know the person I'm supposed to be. I thought that is so beautiful, right?
Yeah.
Because I think all of these moments, all of these experiences are an awakening.
Mm-hmm.
They're really just peeling away the layers of all the things that we've placed on top of ourselves in order to truly be able to discover who we are.
Yeah.
And we are powerful, amazing, amazing beings.
Yeah.
But it takes an element of curiosity after that chaos, after that embrace, a curiosity to really begin to ask the questions on the experience itself.
Yeah. Something you just said is something very beautiful that people will not probably realize this right away. But every tragedy, chaotic, hardship, challenge thing that happens in our life, it, like you just said, it can, if we allow it and we process it in the right way, can help us to become the person we're supposed to be. Those things are happening to pull back and reveal the potential that's within inside us. But instead, what we do with it is we're like, no, this is bad. And I'm fight against it. And I'm going to push it down. And I'm going to get mad at it. And I'm going to wish it didn't happen. And I'm going to look at it in this very negative way. And then that's going to manifest in my body in all different ways. Instead of saying, every single one of these things are happening for me to help me peel back another layer of the onion, another layer of who I am, to expose who I really am and who I'm meant to be. And this is helping me get there. But instead we fight it and we push it down and we ignore it and we make it be bad and we give it a story and it does the opposite.
Well, it takes our power away.
Yeah.
Right? Places us in the position of being the victim, because how could this have happened?
Yeah.
It's how could this have happened, or how could I have gotten myself into that situation? That's the other piece, right? We look at the decisions that we've made as good or bad, right or wrong, success or fail. And again, I say every single decision you've made is a beautiful reflection of who you're destined to be.
Yeah. So how did you go from seizures and headaches and this can't even write a check, sign a check, and to today you're sitting here with me and vibrant and full of life and beautiful? Like, take me through that process. I know we've tapped into it already, the beginning phases of it, but like, what did that look like? What did the work of doing that look like?
So it's a lot of understanding and knowing that you are an intuitive being. Knowing that if you give yourself the opportunity, you will guide yourself down the path of healing. You will guide yourself down the path in a knowing that is going to lead you exactly where you need to be. But it's trusting that intuition. Yeah. And then it is in that being present and just allowing those moments. Like I would have moments where I'm supposed to get on a meeting to write, and I'd sit down and I'd start crying. I'd close my computer and I'd go allow myself to cry for an hour, because I understand now the release of that. Yeah. So it's embracing that, but it's embracing it without judgment. It's just allowing it to be what it is. It's just an emotion. It's just energy that needs to be released. Yeah. And then what I would learn to do is to get really curious around the emotions, around the experience that I was having, and the conversations that were triggering. Because in all of that, I have the ability to be able, and everybody has the ability to be able to discover and uncover what that subconscious mind is playing at. What's the ego doing? Because all of it is just a pattern of the past that is continuing to create the reality of today.
Pattern of the past continuing to affect the reality of today.
It creates the reality of today. Yeah. Well, if I want something different, then I need to understand kind of what the game is. And so having that curiosity, but it's that curiosity within, not outside of. I mean, when I came out of Boston, I looked for all of the diagnoses because I was looking for validation. I didn't understand I was truly just looking for validation of me, not of the illness. But if I can ask those questions within, right? Why am I experiencing this? Why do I feel this way? What is this trying to reveal to me? What is the opportunity here? If I can ask those questions and then just allow the answer to come, there's no expectation. You have to release the outcome. This is the blind courage. You have to release the outcome and just ask the question and be like, I don't care what shows up, just show up for me. And then the answer would arise. And sometimes it's heartbreaking and sometimes it's frustrating. And sometimes you're like, how in the hell could I have ever thought this? Yeah. And you go, well, that's interesting. Okay. So tell me where that leads. And I call it like following the maze of the mind, because we are wickedly creative beings. Now, if I can understand the pattern of the past, I can shift the reality by shifting and creating new patterns. And this is what I help people to understand and to teach. And it really was in understanding the traumas and the experiences, taking my power back from within them, releasing the emotion around them, and shifting those subconscious beliefs, that everything shifted for me, because I got clarity. I could see the others. I could see why it was. I could see what the illness was at play. And once you have that clarity, you get to move forward empowered.
Yeah. So did you just start, was it like was this a gradual healing of the body as you worked through this and eventually or did you literally just see like night and day difference in your physical ailments and illness as you were going through this process?
For some of them, I would see night and day. Like I said, the insomnia was gone overnight. Right. The chronic Lyme disease overcame that. Epstein-Barr overcame that really pretty quick. I mean, I could see those shifts happen pretty instantaneously. Some of the other underliers took a little bit more time, because it's like trauma. Trauma takes a little time to unravel and to peel away the layers of. And so it was the same thing from a physical healing standpoint. But the more that I was able to uncover, the more the physical body was able to heal. And I was back running. I ran another marathon, the first marathon in 2022.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Have you gone back to Boston since?
I have not. That is the goal.
Do you think you will?
Eventually. I think so. Yeah.
So for people who are listening right now, there's this instant thought that came to my mind that I've heard friends, colleagues, whatever say before, is like, I don't want to go back and revisit the past. Like, I don't want to go back and figure out where this came from. Like, I just want to move forward. Can I do this without having to go back? Like, what's your answer to that? Do you have to go back?
Oh my gosh, I would love if we didn't have to go back, if all we could do is look forward. But here's the thing. When people say, I don't want to go back, it's typically because I would have said the exact same thing. Right? Which is why I was like, I'm here for Lyme disease. Do not ask me about my childhood, right? Yeah. I've done the talk therapy, and that's just it. It's because we've done the talk therapy. It's like, I do not want to talk about this anymore. I'm done talking about it. I want to move to the other side of it. In the work that I do, it is not a matter of sitting in it. That's where people don't want to go. I don't want to go back, and I don't want to sit in it, because that was painful. Yeah. Right? I don't want to be doing that. In the work that I do, it's like a light tap. And then when we find it, so if I'm asking questions, and I teach my clients to do this, like, you just ask the questions and it'll lead your mind back into the file in the file cabinet that says, this is where you resourced that. Okay. When we can shift that moment energetically, and in that time go, okay, so if that's what it was, what would you desire it to be? Or how would you shift it? Or what did you learn? Which is always a hard question, but God brings beauty in all sorts of colors, right? What did you learn from it? Then it actually shifts that memory. And I've had many people say to me, I feel lighter, and it's like I'm looking at a Polaroid picture. There's no charge around it anymore. That's what people are going for. Yes. They just don't want to go back and sit in it and sit in the charge of it. Yeah. You don't have to sit in the charge of it. And believe me, we're not going to talk about it for the next 6 months. Right. We're going to lightly tap, we're going to figure it out, and we're going to pull that thread. That's what needs to be done. And when you do that, you can take 15 years of therapy and knock it down into 3 conversations and heal something that's been plaguing.
Wow. I have a friend who is always saying, oh, I've been going to the same therapist for 15 years. And I'm thinking, I don't want to go to that therapist. Because
No kidding.
if we've been going for 15 years, like something's wrong.
Right?
Yes. And she doesn't brag about it, but she'll say I've been in therapy for 15 years. And I'm thinking, I don't want to be in therapy for 15 years. That sounds horrible.
Yes.
And I think that's what people think. If I keep going back and visiting this, I'll never be, it's not going to go away. It's not going to get better. And you're saying, yes, that's completely possible. We don't have to go there and sit in it and dwell in it. We're going to find it. We're going to, and we're going to address it. And now it can be something that loses power and control over you.
Yes.
Because you've addressed it and you can move on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay. I feel like I could go on and on for another hour with you. Oh, my mind is spinning right now. I'm okay. I'm going to be calling her after this. So as we wrap up here, I would just love to know if someone's listening right now.
Yeah.
And this is blowing their mind the way it is mine. What is just that last piece of advice, tip, suggestion, something we haven't talked about yet that you're people need to know? This is how do we wrap this up in someone hearing this right now and saying, I need help with this. This is making sense to me. What do I do with this?
Oh my gosh. It's such a good question. I would say that the one thing that I wish everybody knew, I've been asked this question, Cari, if you could stand on the top of a mountain and you had 1 million people at your feet and you could talk for 10 minutes, what is that thing that you would tell people? And I would say at the end of the day, know your worth, honor your truth, and choose you. Because when you do that, life changes. When you do that, people around you shift and change in a beautiful way because your reality starts to communicate something different. Your reality starts to show you that essence of value and of worth. And when you honor your truth and you ultimately choose you, that's when you get to be the most effective you.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So how can people learn more if they're I need some Cari in my life? I need her to help me with this. Where can they find out more about you? How can they work with you?
So I am on Instagram. Everything is Cari Kenzie, Carikenzie. So you can go to my website. I'm on Instagram or LinkedIn. But honestly, if you just want to book a 30-minute call with me, if you go to my website and just hit book a call, we could sit and have a conversation and chat about what you've got going on. And maybe I can give a little insight into what that shift would need to be for you.
Amazing. This was so good, Cari. Thank you for taking the time to sit down with us today and talk through all this. This is, I have some work to do.
Well, thank you so much. This was an amazing conversation.
Thank you for joining me on today's episode. This story was a remarkable testament to human resilience, courage, and perseverance. To help you manage the ups and downs of your own life journey, I have a special gift for you called the Resilience Playbook. This free guide includes 12 resilience factors that gave me hope, inspiration, and empowerment during some of my darkest times. Whether you're navigating the ups and downs of a relationship, maybe you're facing unexpected twists in your career or your business, or you're tackling personal health challenges, whatever that challenge is in your life today, this playbook will equip you with the tools you need to strengthen your resilience muscle. To get your copy, find me on Instagram and send me a DM with the words playbook, or you can simply click the link in the show notes. Before we part ways today, I want to remind you that you can do hard things and that strength lies within you just waiting to be unveiled. I hope you'll carry the lessons shared today with you as you grow, evolve, and strengthen your resolve. If you enjoyed this episode, be a good friend and share it with someone you know could use it. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an update. Until next time, take care, my friend.